It is California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Michael LeBrun. He is the General Manager of the Nipomo Community Services District, CSD. What exactly is a CSD?
Sure. Thanks for having me first,
Sure.
Brad. Appreciate that. It's a Community Services District. I like to explain it in simple terms. We're a rural community that's maybe moving towards cityhood. The Community Services District is formed by the local residents. Our residents formed this district back in 1965, coming right up on 50 years. And they do that to take local control, and we took local control initially of our water services and then ultimately sewer services as well. So our main services we provide are water and sewer. The rest, planning, police, these types of services are still at the county level.
Why not become a city then?
Incorporating it as a city is something that is done less and less, maybe since Prop 13. I don't know.
One could say.
Yeah, one could
argue.
And it's very difficult then to balance the equation financially to move into a city.
So let's talk about water. I'm sure you live it, breathe it every day. It has been a tough 2014 and even 13 and 12 and maybe 11 if you want to include that.
There's a drought.
Well.
There's a drought, you know. Yeah.
How are you feeling in South San Luis Obispo County? Is the drought impacting your area as severely as others? Fairly agricultural, right above Santa Barbara County with a lot of fields and stuff.
In a word, yes, absolutely impacting our area. We're a groundwater only dependent water district. And in fact, our entire Nipomo area, the Nipomo Mesa area, is groundwater only dependent. And what's difficult as a resources manager, the district does not control it controls our own pumping, but only on a limited basis.
Are you an adjudicated basin?
We are an adjudicated basin, but the outcome of the adjudication, there was no assignment of specific pumping rights or a prescriptive right assigned to the district. So it's still very much every well owner across the mesa can pump what they need to pump any 1 year. So.
Although that could be changing. As you know, there was legislation that was passed, and under this legislation, it is essentially requiring the local entity, be it the CSD, be it the county, to pass some type of ordinance to manage groundwater.
To have a sustainable basin management plan. And I would say...
And if not done, just to make sure our viewers are aware, the state will do it.
Correct. Now, our adjudicated basin was specifically accepted out because we're ahead, we've got basin management plans. But what I'm telling you is we have no ceiling on the amount being pumped, and there are thousands, literally thousands of private well owners. There's a refinery, there's quite a bit of agricultural activity on the mesa. There's Phillips 66. There are 3 golf courses that pump independently to water their turfs.
I have to assume that's causing you some indigestion.
Absolutely. In our basin, we have a court-recognized basin management group. They have put a set of wells called the Key Wells Index to measure the health of the basin underlying our mesa area. That Key Wells Index is at its lowest level in over 75 years. So they selected some wells that they had good spatial access, good access to, good spatial setting across the mesa, and then also wells that had good records. So they established this Key Wells Index in 2009, but we've been able to back calculate it for 75 years. And it's calculated each spring. This past spring, 2014, was at its lowest level in the 75-year record.
I can't imagine those levels have improved
they have
since
not,
the spring of 2014.
They have not improved, and we're a coastal groundwater basin, so that means potential for seawater intrusion. That's our major concern.
And are you there yet?
We are not there. We are not there yet. The county will be taking quality readings along coastal sentinel wells. They've taken them this month, and we expect
So help me out.
Next month.
How would the seawater intrude? Would it be through subsidence? Would it be through... What would have to happen?
Right. On a coastal basin, as opposed to an inland basin like Paso Robles or Central Valley, there will always be water in our groundwater basin. The question is how much how much chloride will be in that water. Because if you draw it down, then that ocean gradient will move inland, and that's seawater intrusion.
How close are you to that? Do you know?
We've seen indications, which are, we watch these coastal sentinel wells, and back in 2009, which was the last, we were in a pretty droughty situation, up in our northern cities area, there were indications of chlorides elevating uncharacteristic.
And that means seawater's coming.
That means that mixing zone is coming near shore.
Got it.
Now, the 5 cities area all have developed water projects, and they were able to move off the groundwater there in the immediate area, and we had some nice wetter and more mild climate return, and those chloride levels dropped back down to potable or freshwater levels.
So I'm sure you're aware that some of your friends to the east, to the north, they've experienced subsidence because of overdrafting of groundwater.
Absolutely.
Are you starting to see subsidence?
No, subsidence is more when you've got fine grain formations. It's more. It's not an issue that our geology underlying our mesa is.
Thank you for that. Explain. I'm that guy who's interested.
Okay, again, it's we're more of a sandy loam type of formation. It's ironically called the Upper Paso Robles formation that we draw from, but that has nothing to do geographically with Paso Robles. But in finer grain formations, that's where you have the clays and whatnot. Those will tend to collapse when you pull all that water out. Our formation is not showing a subsidence.
So what are you going to do in the wake of the regulation passed on for groundwater, in the wake of the passage of Prop 1, which may create some revenue sources for you, in the wake of, I understand you're looking at a rate increase. Well, I don't know if that's connected to all of this.
It is not. On the first 2 items, Prop 1 and the recent state legislation, we'll wait and see. Those things will take years to play out, literally years to play out. What we are doing currently is we're constructing a supplemental water project. We'll be bringing in the first developed water source into this Nipomo Mesa area, and that's what this rate increase is about.
And let's talk about that. You're asking your voters. Now, do you send it to a vote, or is it voted upon by your members that are elected?
No, it's both. First, we develop a rate study. We look at we study the need for rate, and in this case, to pay for the supplemental water that we'll be bringing in via the $17.5 million pipeline we're already paying for and constructing. We expect to be delivering this supplemental water next July, and our rate study says we'll have to adopt a rate specific to pay for that more expensive developed water. So we've approved that rate study, and then that's what allows us to move to the Proposition 218 step of a protest vote proceeding.
Protest, it's kind of a double negative in a way.
It is. There has to, in a rate protest hearing, what happens is we do a 45-day notice period. Basically, the hearing's open that entire period. That hearing notice is out on the streets. Any property owner that we serve water to can simply vote a protest simply by sending us in writing the property address, their statement that they protest, and their signature, and that's basically it. We have a notice out there. I ask any
one voter,
one per property.
Keep going.
And then to have a successful protest, you must have 50 plus one of those property owners within the district.
Over 45 days.
By the time the hearing closes. Our hearing will close on November 21st at 2 p.m. We'll hold a final public meeting where anybody else can walk up, protest in, and then we'll call to the end. We'll close the hearing, and then we'll look if we have the number of protest level required.
And that's how it happens.
Well, and then now that fairly, typically you don't get 50% of the people to turn out for anything, as we see in our recent election. So, right? You just don't. So that's a pretty tough threshold to get a successful protest. Absent a successful protest, then the board of directors can act to officially adopt the rate. So we'll have a hearing, we'll hear protests, we'll certainly hear from some of our constituents.
Will you come back and tell us more about what happens? Because this is really democracy in action in the truest sense. His name is Michael LeBrun. He is the general manager of the Nipomo Community Services District. It's a mouthful. I'm Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.